My parents sent me a bill for the years I lived in their house after I moved out, because I refused to keep paying for my golden child sister. But my lawyer will sue them for free, because they're idiots. Recently, I finally made the decision to move out of my parents' house. For some people that might not seem like much, but for me it feels like a huge step in life. Hi, for as long as I can remember, I've dreamed of having my own space, a completely private place where I can live how I want, make my own decisions, and enjoy the freedom of being independent. But now that I've made this decision, my parents aren't taking it well at all. In fact, they're really upset about it. A bit of background about my family: I'm the eldest daughter, and both my parents are alive and together. I also have a younger sister. Growing up, my parents relied on me a lot, not just for the usual household responsibilities, but also when it came to taking care of my sister. In many ways, I felt like I was expected to act as a second mother to her, stepping in to handle things that should have been my parents' job. Because of that, I've carried a lot of responsibility from a very young age. Naturally, having my own place was exactly what I wanted most. I also expected that my parents, and even my sister, would treat me with a little more respect. Well, reality couldn't have been further from that. My parents have never truly appreciated the things I've done for them. No matter how much I helped or how hard I worked, it was never enough. They always demanded more from me. By the time I was only 15, I was already expected to take on adult responsibilities in the house. My mom relied on me for chores and cooking, and both of them acted as if it was my duty to take care of their needs every day. And if I ever wanted to go out and spend time with my friends like a normal teenager, they wouldn't let me. Instead, they'd guilt-trip me into staying home or even take away my phone to make sure I didn't leave. My mom constantly reminded me that as the oldest daughter, it was my duty to put my family first and look after my sister. For her, spending time with friends or doing things for myself was just a waste of time. She made it clear that my role in the family came before anything else. It was like our entire existence revolved around this family, and nothing else could exist outside of it. On the rare occasions when I was actually allowed to go out, I still wasn't completely free. My parents would text me every 15 minutes or so asking what time I'd be home. They also insisted that I take my sister with me no matter what I was doing or who I was meeting. Imagine being a teenager who finally gets a chance to hang out with your friends, but having to drag your little sister everywhere. It was awkward, frustrating, and honestly embarrassing. As my sister got older, she also started to notice the family dynamic, except that she wasn't burdened with nearly as many responsibilities. Most of the time, if she didn't do something right, it became my responsibility. If my sister didn't study for an exam, I had to manage my own schoolwork while also making sure she studied for hers. If she failed, obviously it was my fault for not doing enough. I was supposed to be the helicopter sister watching over her best interests, even though that wasn't my job, and it shouldn't have been my parents' either. She was old enough to know she had to study and pass without needing someone breathing down her neck. Another clear example of favoritism was with the chores. Whenever there was housework to do, cleaning, cooking, running errands, they always called me. My sister, on the other hand, rarely lifted a finger. I couldn't complain, because there was always a convenient excuse to argue why she couldn't do them. For example, that she had failed a test and needed to study, even though she'd just fail again the next week. Saying that out loud was the same as being labeled a winner. My sister took full advantage of this favoritism, because she was the one benefiting from it and she was going to milk it for all it was worth. She knew she was the favorite, and instead of feeling guilty about it, she enjoyed it. She constantly sneaked out to parties at night, something I couldn't even dream of doing without facing serious consequences. And the worst part was that if my parents found out about her sneaking out, they wouldn't hold her accountable. Instead, they'd blame me, accusing me of putting ideas in her head or making her rebellious, as if she didn't have a mind of her own and couldn't do anything wrong unless I was behind it. All of this slowly built a wall between my sister and me. Instead of being close, we ended up fighting all the time. She never truly respected me, probably because she grew up seeing how little respect my parents gave me. To her, I was someone she could order around, someone who always had to be there when she needed, more like a personal assistant than a sister. When it came time to go to college, deep down I already knew I needed to choose one as far from home as possible. I thought that would finally give me the space and independence I'd always wanted. But my dad completely dismissed that idea. He openly threatened me, saying that if I didn't choose a nearby university, he would cut off all financial support. I was only 18, had zero savings, because I never had time to work, and no one who could co-sign a loan. It was either that or not go to college at all. With all the pressure at home, I wasn't an outstanding student who could afford to lose a few years while working and figuring out how to move out. I know now there were probably other options, but at the time, after being emotionally and physically worn down by all the work I had to do, the only thing I wanted was to hang on a little longer until I could finally leave. Other girls my age had rock bands, celebrity crushes, and posters on their bedroom walls. I only thought about how I could get out of there once I finished school, if only I had the tools. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. At that time, I truly believed that if I just kept doing everything my parents wanted, they would eventually see who I really was and love me for it. I thought their approval was something I could earn if I sacrificed enough of myself. But no matter how much I gave, no matter how obedient I was, that moment of recognition and appreciation never came. Things finally reached a breaking point last Christmas, when we had a family dinner at home. My parents, at least, seemed interested in hearing about my university life and wanted me to share things, probably because they saw a more secure future with me. With my sister, that would be nearly impossible. During dinner, my sister, who had ended up in a community college because her grades weren't very good, became jealous almost immediately. She couldn't stand that, for once, the spotlight was on me and that I had something positive to share with our parents. She started verbally attacking me right in front of her boyfriend, who had come to meet our family for the first time. She didn't hold back, she mocked me and provoked me, saying that no matter what university I went to, I'd always be a lonely loser because, according to her, I had no social life and no boyfriend. What made it worse was that my parents didn't intervene. They just sat there in silence while she tore me apart. I saw her boyfriend sitting beside her, clearly uncomfortable, trying to calm her down, even defending me. She went on to mock my weight and say how disgusted she was to be related to me. That day, she called me a nerd with no life, trying to humiliate me in front of everyone. I snapped back and told her that maybe, in her eyes, I was a nerd, but at least I had more to show than her tiny brain. Maybe that's why she needed a boyfriend, because she looked for guys to pay for her things, since in her whole life she'd never earn enough to buy even an olive to eat. Her boyfriend almost smiled, because even he could see her entitled attitude, everyone could, except my family. Then my mom jumped in to defend my sister. She told me I had no right to speak to her that way, accusing me of being arrogant. She said my sister was doing her best in school and that being in a relationship was good for her, that just because I couldn't find a boyfriend didn't mean I could talk badly about her or take out my frustration on the family dinner. Of course, she completely ignored the fact that my sister had done exactly that to me, without me saying a single word before. But it got even worse. According to my mom, and my dad nodded in agreement, it was time for me to start working and helping them out financially. My parents had been supporting my sister without getting much in return, so that money would now also go to her, supposedly to teach me a lesson. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I shouted, "Why me? Why can't you help me too? Why don't you ever give me money as well?" And just to clarify, they've never given me money all this time, not even to pay for college. They only signed my student loan. Everything else I've had to pay myself through seasonal or part-time jobs. My focus had always been to finish school as soon as possible, without delaying it by taking on a full-time job. My mom just shook her head and told me I should be grateful for what I had. She said sending money home would teach me to respect my family, and that I shouldn't be greedy or selfish or expect anything in return. Devastated, I stood up from the table and went to my room to be alone. As I closed the door, I could still hear my sister and my parents yelling at me, my sister calling me a snowflake and dramatic for reacting the way I did. After that disastrous Christmas, I made a firm decision: I would get a job and move out, even if it took me longer to finish school. I had been a victim of their abuse for far too long. but that was Santa's gift to me. In the days that followed, my parents kept pressuring me to get a job, and to avoid listening to them while I figured out a solution for myself, I told them that I was already looking. Instead, I went to talk to my university coordinator and asked if it would be possible to adjust some of my courses so I could fit in a part-time job. I'm studying something pretty demanding, and I needed to drop a few things to make room in my schedule. When he asked why, since he's seen other students start working and slowly drop out of college, I had to tell him everything. And that's when the Christmas miracle happened, though it was already January and people were taking down their reindeer decorations. My coordinator found me a job on campus as a student assistant. Since I was in my final year and had a decent GPA, I could help a professor, get paid, and even live in the dorms. You could say I'd be sleeping at work. He was explaining other benefits, like meal discounts in the cafeteria, but I didn't even let him finish. I said yes right away. Now, 6 months later, things are finally falling into place. I had to wait for the new semester to start so I could officially begin as a teaching assistant, but I'm already moved into my new dorm room. The next good news is that I'll be graduating at the end of the year. During this whole period, I've been lying straight to my parents' faces, telling them I was still job hunting but that things were tough. I know lying is wrong, but it felt so good to lie to them. At least things haven't been so bad lately. I spent most of my time studying at the university, while my parents thought I was out at interviews, and my sister was busy fooling around with another new boyfriend. Yes, the previous one dumped her. Second Christmas miracle. I only went home at night to sleep, spending as little time there as possible. The hard part, for them, not for me, was the day I basically grabbed my pillow, because I can't sleep without it, and left. I had already moved out most of my stuff, but that morning, when I got my dorm room, I took my pillow and a few last things and said, "Well, I'm moving out." The moment I said it, they were like, "What's going on here?" My mom and dad immediately started insisting that moving out wasn't a good idea. They said they wanted me to stay home to take care of them as they got older, as if that were my responsibility. I couldn't help but smile because I was so happy. I told them that wasn't going to take up any space in my mind. If they really needed someone, maybe they could ask my sister, so she'd finally have the chance to repay the favor, since all they've done for her should give them some kind of return, right? My dad argued that my sister wasn't responsible enough, and that in families it's always expected that the eldest child, meaning me, takes care of the parents. I told them I had resigned from that position. I had decided I was no longer part of that family. From now on, all the big sister duties were my sister's problem. My parents said, "You can't resign from being our daughter," and that they still expected a lot from me. I told them clearly that I didn't care what they expected, and that I didn't need their approval to stop considering myself their daughter. Since that conversation, my parents haven't stopped blaming me. They accused me of stabbing them in the back and abandoning them in their old age, as if I were betraying them just by claiming my independence. I won't deny that their words hurt, but by the time I got to my dorm room, I had already blocked them. So it was just a faint sting. Now my only concern is doing my job well, maybe taking small advantage of my assistant privileges in the cafeteria, and finishing my degree. After that, I can find a well-paid job and move into my own apartment or something. I guess lying to them these past months might make me look like the bad guy, but honestly, I don't care. To be honest with you, I think it's a small payback for everything awful they did to me as parents. The only thing that matters to me is watching that house fall apart without me there to handle the chores. Edit, because people asked in the comments, and I guess others might want to know too. I don't know my sister's reaction, probably neutral. As I said before, we were avoiding each other, or at least I was. I also doubt my parents will make her do any housework. Those delicate hands that have only ever worked to please some guy probably don't even know what a mop looks like. As for my parents, I haven't heard much, just the messages they sent before I blocked them. They said I should turn around and come back, that I'd regret it, and that I still had time to return. But there I was, riding in my Uber, pillow under one arm and my phone in the other, hitting block, with the biggest smile on my face. If you knew me in real life, you'd probably have never seen me smile that much, unlike my parents, who had the longest faces ever. And honestly, I'm proud of that, because their misery was finally my doing, my own responsibility. Update 1. My life these past 3 weeks has been wonderful, except for a little detail I'll tell you about in a moment. I'm saving myself from cooking, and although the cafeteria food isn't exactly the healthiest, I try to pick the best options. My job as a professor's assistant isn't so bad. I don't have as many hours as a normal part-time job, and it isn't exactly a course I loved, but it was the only one available and it's only for 6 months, maybe 12 if I don't find something before graduation. Compared to living with my parents and sister, it feels like a holiday in the Maldives. No entitled student compares to my family. I feel like I've had intensive military training on how to deal with people like them. That's the good part. Then my parents showed up. They came to campus to talk to me face to face. They didn't know where I was living because, despite pestering my friends for info, nobody told them anything, except one friend who said, she moved 3 states away, what a loss. My parents didn't take that hint. They must have called to check if I was still enrolled, but what they did do was wander the campus all morning looking for me while I was in my dorm studying for an exam. When I was walking to my class as an assistant, they intercepted me. I should have taken a different route, but I didn't expect a Wild West ambush from my parents. My first instinct was to apologize, say I was busy, and walk away, but I wasn't far from where I was going and I didn't have extra minutes to risk being late. I thought they wouldn't come into class, but they did, and they followed me to the front. They were nervous because the whole lecture hall was watching, including the course professor, who looked at them like, what are these specimens doing here? He knows my story, so when my parents began asking me to go somewhere private, the professor started questioning them. You could say he turned the class into an interrogation. He asked them questions while they tried to defend themselves, which was a total disaster for them because they sounded as entitled as ever, but they were completely roasted by my professor. In the end my dad told my mom it was better to leave, and they left while everyone watched. As they walked out, one student said, "Professor, you should answer them, not humiliate them," and we all burst out laughing. I was a little embarrassed, but the students and the professor handled it in the best way possible and offered their sympathies for the family I got stuck with. I think that was enough of a university experience for my parents, because I didn't hear from them again after that. I don't know what they intended to achieve with that confrontation. If you've had a tiger in captivity and then release it into the wild, that animal isn't likely to hop back into the cage. You're going to have to wrestle with it, and you might lose an arm trying. Update 2. It's only been 2 months since I moved out, and guess what? I just received a bill from my parents for my monthly expenses from the time I turned 18. Yes, apparently the years I lived with them, despite doing tons of work, weren't free. According to them, all that care, food, and shelter, all in huge quotation marks, has been estimated and put into an absurdly large number. It's funny until you realize these people actually expect me to pay it. I wonder if my sister got a similar bill. How naive of me to think otherwise. If you thought the bill itself was bad, my dad also sent me an email detailing the sacrifices they'd supposedly made raising me when they were young, which is true, they had me young, but they had me. It's not like I owe them for existing. According to him, they spent thousands raising me, made enormous sacrifices, and what did they get in return? An ungrateful, selfish daughter. He went on and on, painting themselves as heroic, wind-blown Maine Greek heroes. As a cherry on top, he said the least I could do after turning my back on them was to pay them that money, and that once I did, they'd leave my life completely and I'd never have to see them again. I know they'd never treat my sister that way. She never had to earn anything or work for anything, and yet they expect me to shoulder all responsibilities, even financial ones. She'll never be asked to pay anything because, somehow, she's always special in their eyes. My original plan was petty: send a single cent in an envelope with a note that said, "Here's everything I owe you, keep the change." However, I spoke to someone at the university who recommended I see one of the law professors for a pro bono consult. He said he wouldn't charge for services as long as I allowed him to use my story as a teaching example in his class. He uses crazy real cases to teach, and mine would be unforgettable, a pair of delirious parents billing their daughter. So I did it. He warned that sending even a penny could be taken as an acceptance that I acknowledged they'd done something for me. So instead, we're preparing to sue them. We'll calculate the value of all the work I did as a house servant and babysitter, and if we take a reasonable hourly rate, it's more than what they billed me. If we settle, they'd end up owing me. I'd love to see their faces when they get served. My lawyer said to avoid contact with them, and that's the plan. Edit: no, my parents haven't sued me, they only sent a bill. But we are suing them. For now, it's partly a game of being petty and having fun until they get tired. We're not ruling out taking it further if my parents keep acting foolish. This professor wouldn't mind taking the case. Update 3. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and my parents' response hasn't come through a lawyer, but through another email. This time, they said it wasn't fair that I was suing them, that I couldn't do that. Well, watch me do it. At this point, it's not even something I want anymore. My lawyer says it's his moral duty to take these idiots to court. Because aside from sounding outraged, they still insist that the least I could do is return the favor by sending money home every month. I've been sending something home every month, the notification that the lawsuit is still active. My parents have nothing to gain here, and no judge is going to grant them what they're asking for. There's absolutely nothing in writing where they ever informed me I had to pay for living there. Meanwhile, I can gather a lot of proof, neighbors, friends, and other people willing to testify on my behalf. They want to testify. They're the ones spending money on a lawyer, while mine is working for free. And even if some judge took their ridiculous claim seriously, they'd still be at a disadvantage against mine. There is no scenario where this ends well for my parents. But, like I said before, if you try to shove a tiger back into its cage, it'll take your arm off. Well, I hope they weren't too attached to those arms, because I'll hang them in my dorm room when I'm done with them. Of course, figuratively speaking. Now, about my sister, because she had something to say about our parents. She's become a key witness in my case, though that was never the plan at first. She posted on social media that I'm jealous and resentful because I resent my parents for making me take care of her and for doing chores like any other teenager. However, she deleted it soon after, when people started calling her out with the truth, that she never had to do any of that. My lawyer says we now have what's called a smoking gun. The irony? It came from the golden child herself. She didn't do it to help me, just out of her own stupidity. Next time, Mom and Dad, pick a smart favorite, not one who helps you lose. Update 4. It's been 2 months since my last update, and things are still escalating. More news on my lawsuit. They keep sending emails, because that's the only place I haven't blocked them. My lawyer calls it a flytrap, because they keep falling for it, sending every stupid thing that crosses their minds. Now they're begging me to drop the lawsuit because, if they lose, they might also lose their house. At first, I thought they were joking just to make me feel sorry for them, which I didn't. But my lawyer said their mortgage has actually gone unpaid for several months. I haven't replied. I'm still trying not to give them anything they can twist against me, but I'm dying to tell my mother to ask my sister if any of her boyfriends could pay for her instead. After all, they always said dating boys was an important skill. Maybe it's time she uses it for something useful. My sister seems to have learned her lesson, or maybe she's just too sad about losing the house too. A real shame, she was such a great ally to have. As for the lawsuit, we're still open to a settlement or to going to court. My lawyer says he's ready for anything. There's no case he enjoys more than this one. The best move for my parents would be to settle, because even in the best case scenario, they'll spend a fortune on lawyers. Even if they somehow don't lose in court, the financial stress will destroy them. At this point, I think they're hoping I'll withdraw the case because they assume my lawyer is draining me financially, or that I'll give up. But he's working for free, and neither of us is getting tired of this anytime soon. Update 5. The most important news: I've graduated from university. I don't have a full-time job yet, but I'll stay on for about 6 more months as a teaching assistant before I find one and move out. I can still use the dorms and the cafeteria. We won our lawsuit, in a way. The amount wasn't huge, considering the circumstances. It's not enough money to start a brand new life, but you know what they say, when you pull one card from a house of cards, the whole thing collapses. And that's exactly what happened to my parents and sister. Even the slightest breeze, our lawsuit, made everything fall apart. My parents finally offered $5,000 to settle and end it all. We were ready to accept, but my lawyer said, "You know what? Let's have a little more fun." He demanded $5,200, the extra $200 being his fee. It worked beautifully. First, it was a small reward for him, even though he took the case for fun, but also a way to show how little their dignity was worth. We figured their lawyer probably cost them around $3,000. And, honestly, we used those extra $200 to have a victory dinner, courtesy of my parents. In the end, they agreed, because refusing would have cost them even more. It was hilarious. My lawyer said, $5,200, and we closed the deal, while extending his hand. They sighed, said yes, and that was that. My parents didn't manage to save the house, they're renting somewhere I don't know. I only heard that my sister isn't living with them anymore. Technically, I could use those $5,000 to move out and start on my own, but honestly, working here has been so enjoyable and profitable that I might pursue a career in teaching. It's something I've been considering, though I'd probably do it at another university, since there are no openings here at the moment. I want to enjoy my last bit of time in this place. I could leave if I wanted to, but I'll miss writing here. It's been the second best thing to come out of all this. The first, of course, was giving my father a taste of revenge. And no, I'm not crying saying goodbye, there's just something in my eye. Mini update. I found a job. Not as a teacher, but I honestly didn't have any preference. I also didn't feel like waiting years for a tenured teaching position. I'll be moving to my own place next month. Another tiny update. My sister finally dropped out of college. To be honest, that's not exactly shocking. I'm pretty sure she went there just to find boyfriends, because I never once saw her study,